Today we're talking about the age-old concept, insecurities
in
friendships. If you're new here, this is Fantastic, your friendly neighborhood podcast, making self-improvement fun. I am your co-host, Joie Solano.
And I'm your other co-host, Joie Solano. We're best friends and siblings, and we're here to help you become the best version of yourself. This season is all about friendships, and today we're asking ourselves an interesting question. Why are we insecure about friendships? Let's jump into it. Cue the intro.
So recently, I've been feeling a little bit insecure about my friendships, and we wanted to share it with you because we're #real.
#super real. #what other podcast mentions their insecurities like this?
Crazy, literally all of them. But anyway, as I was thinking about my friends, not like my super ride or die friends, but like the recent friends that I've met in the past year and a half, they have been hanging out without me.
Say it ain't so.
It is so. And I know that it's not like a malicious thing. They don't even think about it. I'm 100% sure. But I do get a sense of FOMO because I'm just like, oh my gosh, guys, I love hanging out with all of you. But like, where's the invite? Hello?
I thought we all knew each other. I thought it was a safe space.
Hello?
Guys.
Please invite me. So yeah, I think it's been interesting. Because I do find myself, you know how like sometimes you like see yourself in a third person POV? And the third person POV is just me on my phone on Instagram. And I'm like curled up on my bed. And I'm like scrolling through the stories. And I'm like, oh shoot, that's fun. They're hanging out without me. That's dope.
Ooh. Oh, right. They have another life.
They have another life without me. And so, yeah, that's something I've been feeling major FOMO and major insecurity about. Like, oh, guys, do you not like hanging out with me? Like, why did I get the invite? Like, what's up?
That's so real, especially the scrolling on my bed part. For me, my insecurity is kind of the same thing about scrolling on my bed. And I'll see my close friends, like one or two of my close friends, and I'm like, they're posting a picture of them hanging out with a big group. And I'm, oh, right, you guys, like, you have a life outside of our friendship and you have other friends. You're making other friends. This sounds so possessive and toxic.
It is. It is possessive. No, I'm playing. I think it's normal. Everyone has insecurities.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not trying to deny your feelings.
Yeah, but like I do have a sense of FOMO too, that like, oh, all my friends are probably making new friends, making new connections, their world is expanding, and I'm just like here in my small bubble. And it is harder because I am in community college.
Yeah.
But, you know, like we had these insecurities and we thought like, we have a podcast about friendships and we should totally talk about them because it's perfectly normal to have insecurities. So we did some research to better understand why we have these insecurities. And our goal with today's episode is to reframe them in a way that is healthier. And so we can take action and know what we can control so we can actually get to a better place and we're not so insecure.
Yeah. And so the way that we kind of approached each of the different insecurities, we have 3 listed, is we asked ourselves, what do we want? What can we control? And how do we approach this with self-kindness in mind?
The first insecure thought we had was, no one wants to be my friend. But instead, we reframed it as, when I'm authentic, I will attract the friends I want.
Real. I think it's so easy when you're feeling insecure and you're like, oh, nobody wants to be my friend, to feel like nobody likes me. Nobody likes my personality. I'm not interesting. The things that I watch aren't the things that other people watch. So it's like you kind of spiral down this like weird little rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I think if you're anything like me, where your spiraling can get really bad, it's like, oh my God, I'm the worst person ever. No one likes me. There's something wrong with me. Even though that's definitely not the case.
Hey, I like you.
Hey, thanks. Hey, I'm glad we're doing this podcast because if it was anyone else, they probably wouldn't have said that.
Hey, you're welcome, bestie. Thanks. Yeah, I think sometimes too, like when I'm hanging out in new settings and I'm trying to make friends and it doesn't click right away, like there's no chemistry, or if I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys watch the Justice League? That's what I'm watching right now. I'm like, do you guys watch the Justice League? But like, nah, buddy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shoot.
Yeah, and then like when they don't respond in the way that you thought they would, they're not like, everyone watches the Justice League, yay! It's like, oh wait, oh my God, maybe my hobby, I need to get new hobbies. Yeah. Maybe I need to get with the crowd.
There's like this weird feeling of like feeling like you have to change yourself in order to feel more likable to this certain group of people.
Yeah, but when you change yourself, you end up making a new personality, you make a new identity, and like now you're not being authentic, and I don't think that's helping you attract actually the right people. If anything, it's kind of stopping your growth or like your journey to find great friends because you're putting out like a face to the world.
Yeah, or you're not even trying, and then you become part of this like self-fulfilling prophecy where it's like because you deeply believe that no one wants to be your friend, you don't make the effort to make new friends, and then you look at yourself and you're like, why don't I have any friends? Nobody wants to be my friend. So then you stop wanting to be friends with other people, so you don't put yourself out there. So because you don't put yourself out there, you don't make any new friends. So it's like, which came first, the chicken or the rabbit? You know what I mean?
Guys, are you picking up what he's laying down?
Are you picking up what I'm throwing up? Anyways, so we asked ourselves, okay, how can we reframe this in a healthier way? And the way that we got there was we asked ourselves, what do we want? Friends. What can we control? It's where we go to find friends and how we show up in those spaces, and also how we treat others. And then also, how do we become kind to ourselves is one, understanding that you got to choose yourself. That's on period. And then two, understand that no one else is going to fight harder for your happiness besides you are. So you really have to put yourself out there. And three, realize that nothing is wrong with you.
Nothing, baby. Nothing.
You know what I'm saying? And so after that, we realized, okay, maybe it's not no one wants to be friends with you. It's that when you're authentic, you will attract the friends that you want. Joie, elaborate.
So, first things first, as Ian was saying, you have to be kind to yourself. You have to choose yourself first. I think a big part of like having or making friends is putting yourself out there in the sense that you're going to places alone. You're focusing on yourself. You're doing the things you want because if you show up in the places that you are interested in, if you like love reading and you go to a book club, you're putting yourself first. You're focusing on yourself, what you want, instead of you trying to cater towards others.
Yeah.
Maybe you're trying to like get validation from others by like changing yourself. You do not want to do that. Focus on yourself first, and you will attract the right people.
Right. And the way that I like to think about it personally is that like I like to think of myself as like a magnet. And I'm always asking myself, how can I be a stronger magnet? And for me, being a stronger magnet is really understanding what you're interested in and pursuing those things. So the more that you're able to kind of showcase to the world, hey, I am interested in mutual aid. I'm interested in reading, writing, making this podcast, going to the gym, playing pickleball, playing League of Legends. Like when you showcase that more to the world, then you're able to attract people who also resonate. But the only way that that can happen is if you kind of do the thing.
Yes, for sure. I feel like the people who I am friends with, it's usually like I pick up on something that they're authentically enjoying. Like one of my friends is really good at like drawing, and I'm like, oh my God, I like drawing too. Not that you're an art major, but I like drawing too. And then now we're friends because I was able to talk to them about that.
Right.
And I think like hiding that part of you, maybe because you're insecure that no one will like you, is limiting yourself. I wouldn't have approached that friend if I didn't know they were into that, you know?
Right.
I would have been worried like, oh, maybe we don't have anything to talk about, but they gave me something.
Yeah, because I think it's easy for you, like for people to be like, oh my gosh, nobody wants to be my friend and life sucks. But really the way that you should be thinking about it is that like, well, you can't control how other people see you. You can't control if whether or not they like you, and that's real. You know, but you can't control is whether or not you like yourself, and also whether or not you're having a good time. And those things you could always control. So that's a healthy way to approach it. So maybe have fun with yourself.
Yeah. Maybe hashtag love yourself.
The second insecure thought is the work I'm putting into my friendships isn't paying off. But instead it should be reframed as, I understand that friendships take time. If I put in genuine effort and intention, they will grow.
Exactly. For me personally, I think in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm being social. I like scroll on social media. I'm like following all these people. I'm connected with these people on social media. I like their posts so they know I'm alive and I like have acknowledged them. But for some reason, I still feel really lonely. Like I will see all these people. It feels like I'm seeing all these people's lives, and yet like I haven't actually had a single conversation, like a genuine conversation with them.
Yeah.
And I feel like I haven't had actual human connection with them, you know? And then in the other case is like, I might plan a hangout with someone new and I just don't feel like there's a spark. And I expect like, part of me, even though I know this is unrealistic, part of me expects that like after this one hangout, bam, our friendship is gonna explode. We're gonna go right off to the sunset on our horses and like, wow, we're besties forever and ever and ever. you know?
Yeah. I think when it comes, there's like this weird thing about social media and that makes you think that you're being friends with somebody. Like when you meet somebody new at a party or an event and then you follow each other on social media, like I don't think you guys are friends yet. Like that's just like the step one of the friendship, but like that doesn't, you're just acquaintances, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's this weird balance of like, oh, how many people do I actually care about when I'm scrolling through my feed? And I think for me, when I was in college, I realized that I had like 1,000 followers from like people I met at parties, events, conferences, clubs, all those different things. And I realized like I don't really care about 99% of these people. I'm like, who is this person? You have a dog? Who cares? You know? And so I decided to make a different Instagram. And then when I did that, I felt like my social media experience was improved because it started to feel like it was actually social.
Yeah, I really like Ian's Instagram because it feels so much more personal. And it's just like, I don't know. He's really good at it. Like his captions are really thoughtful. They're like diary entries. And when he posts, it's not necessarily about like looking, like it's not about putting off a certain aesthetic. It's just like,
but they don't look bad though.
Yeah, they don't look bad. He's really good at taking photos. It's just that like he's more focused on like, this is what happened. Like here's an update on my life.
Yeah. And I think that's like the best way to approach social media. So anyway, when we were trying to think about how to reframe this thinking, we asked ourselves, what do we want? What can we control? And how do we approach this with self-kindness in mind? What do we want? We want to grow friendships. What do we control? How we engage with our friends, who we spend time with when we're free, and how we choose to deepen our friendships. And the things to keep in mind to be nice to yourself is remember that things take time. And one of my favorite quotes is, don't rush things that you want to last forever.
That's a good quote. I think the two ways people spend time mostly, well, to break it down, the two ways people mostly spend time with their friends are online and in person. So we broke it down into like each way, how you can actually, I don't know, be a better friend and engage with them in a way that actually deepens the connection.
But I think the first thing with social media is one thing that you need to know as a reminder is that likes is not actually doing anything.
Likes is not building that friendship. Like you feel like, oh wow, hey, I saw that you went to New York. Like this is me acknowledging it. But you're not actually connecting with the person. You aren't asking them any questions about their trip. If anything, you're just observing their life, but you're not really taking part in it.
Right. I think if like you do want it to lead to something, like take the information that you get from social media and start a conversation. When you comment in their DMs, like maybe comment something that's like substantial, or when you see their story, swipe up and just like be like, oh my gosh, I love how this looks. Because even those little things add up, but if you're just liking stuff, it's not really doing anything.
Yeah, and I think more often than not, people actually do want to engage and talk about themselves, you know? Like posting is a way to like show people like, oh, this is what I did. But I feel like it's even more fulfilling when someone shows that curiosity to you and they're like, oh my God, like how was the trip? And I'm like, okay, now I can talk about how the trip was. Thank you for being so curious. And another way is that like, maybe you're on the other side where you're like posting. How to post and actually make social media social? Well, I feel like as we were talking about earlier, like Ian does it in a way I think that makes it really social, where like he's just having fun, he's posting with intention to like start conversations, which means like when he posts about his day, he has like a thoughtful caption that like talks about a lot that happened. And I think having the caption with so much substance gives people like more to talk about, you know? Like I've seen a lot of his comments are like his friends that are just like, oh my God, that's so sick, bro. What was your favorite part of like that museum? Oh my God, that's so sick.
And I think it's like a lot of people do this now where it's like they have like their Finsta. And I think it's like a great innovation that this generation has brought up. You know what I mean? I think people have come to the realization that like social media can feel really draining. But if you do have a Finsta, then it's like you've solved the problem. Good job.
Yeah, it makes it so much easier. It's like so stress-free. And I think you don't necessarily have to make a new account. If anything, you can just like remove the people that you don't want on your account.
Seriously.
I don't think that social media has to be that serious. It feels kind of fake how you have all these like followers, but you don't actually want to put yourself out there. But the whole point of social media is to be yourself. Is to be social. So like remove those people if you gotta. You know, make your account smaller if you need to, and then start posting all the things you want to do.
Yeah, I think when you start using social media for like a tool to get better with your connections, to like improve those relationships, the better it'll get. I know that there was this one thing that I read this week about how social media didn't really make things better, they just made things faster. Or like the internet in general. An example of this is when you're at work, just because it takes you faster with like new, innovations with AI to like get something done doesn't mean that you're going to have less work. Instead, you're going to have more work, but you're just going to do the work faster. And it's the same thing with social media. Is that like just because you can easily like somebody instead of like calling them up and like texting them, like doesn't mean that it's the same thing. Like they can't substitute each other.
Yeah. I feel like a like can't substitute like an actual conversation, and you still have to go through the work of like talking to them to actually understand what happened or to actually get to know them.
Yeah.
Like a liking isn't just gonna do that. It's not gonna solve that.
Right. Because when you think about like yourself and like if you're going through a hard time and you post something on social media and no one like comments or DMs you, it's like, oh, are those real connections or not?
Ooh, yeah. Like followers are not an actual symbol of your friends. And like I feel like that would be a very strong wake up call. Like, oh, I guess the people that I thought were my friends aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of like in-person events, I think something I had read earlier this week that was really surprising was that friendships have become more formal, which means that like they kind of feel like business meetings, like you're putting too much work into them. Here, let me get into specifics. So like nowadays, I feel like the average friendship hangout is like, oh, let's go to this like really cool museum that just opened. Like it's now a combination of you hanging out with a friend and also going to this like big event. And the big event is supposed to be like, this is what's going to make the hangout worth it. You're going to this place and like, we're going to have a good time because we're going to this thing.
Yeah, and the downside of that is that like when it comes to a big event, right, you have to constantly change the logistics. It's like always at a different place. You always have to look whether or not the traffic looks good, the parking looks good, how much it is. And it's less about the conversation that you're having with a friend and like the little things that you're doing, but instead it's more about like the backdrop. It's more about like, oh, is this worth it for me to go and like plan it out? And I think when Joie means like, oh, friendships have become more formal, it's like a lot of these hangouts are scheduled way in advance. And what sucks about like friendships in general, or at least what I experience, is that like it's so easy to push things back, to say like, hey, I'm busy this day because, I'm feeling XYZ. Hey, I'm busy because something else came up. And then you never reschedule the event. So that way it just kind of fizzles out and disappears.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also with scheduling in advance, it kind of feels like a business meeting with how rare it is too. It's like it's like just a catch-up event instead of it being like, oh, we're friends and we're like continuously having conversation. I feel like some of the best friends I've had are like where I've met them or I meet them regularly instead of just like expecting, like how I said earlier, like expecting this one hangout after like 6 months to be like, wow, we're best friends.
I think what we've been saying in our previous episodes too is that like a lot of the friendships really grow through the small moments, right? Like the small inside jokes that you create when you're just hanging out constantly, whether that's like a book club, going to the gym, doing something artful on a regular basis where it's like the place is consistent. You know the place, right? It's easy to get there. The specific time. So like a lot of these things you don't have to think about. So there's less mental power that you're putting into it in contrast to, oh, let's do this big thing and only see each other every 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, I like literally just this past Friday, I had made a hangout and I didn't even realize that it was so formal. Like I was thinking like, oh my God, the parking, the traffic, like why did I choose somewhere so far? Like, will they like this exhibit? What restaurants should we go to? And I think I put more thought into like planning the whole thing.
Yeah.
By the time that like when the event or like when the hangout happened, I was pretty tired.
Yeah, and you're kind of like not in the present. I think a lot of times like relationships are built when you're in the present.
Yeah, and like having an informal friendship and like making it low stakes, picking a place that's familiar makes you more present because you're not focused on all these like other factors that are happening around you. Our third and last insecure thought is the more friends I have, the happier I'll be. But instead, you should reframe it as genuine friendships will make me happy.
I feel like a lot of times I personally have this problem where I think that a lot of my loneliness will be solved by having more friends. That is not the case. That has never worked.
If anything, it feels like I'm just stretching myself thin.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, this friend. I need to pay attention to all of them. And then now I feel like I have all these surface level new friends.
Yeah.
Instead of actually building all of that genuine connection that would fulfill the like empty hole in my heart.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot easier to make new friends instead of to deepen the ones that you already have, because in order to deepen the friendships that you currently have, you have to go through like this friction. You know, you have to put yourself out there, which is scary. You have to go and do hangouts, which is challenging and time consuming. Like a lot of the things that require a good friendship is hard and challenging, but it is worth it. But what's easier is for you to, you know, fool yourself into thinking that because you're making a lot of new friends, it's actually that you're not a lonely person.
Yeah. And I think the idea of wanting new or like more friends for me personally, it just comes from like seeing people on social media post about like how many friends they have. I'm like, damn, a new person. You're hanging out with a new person every week. Whoa, I can only count my friends in like my fingers, you know? Like
10.
And also in like TV shows, I think growing up, I used to think like, wow, every freaking sitcom has a good friend group and they have like an amazing dynamic. And like currently I find myself having more like individual friendships. So I thought, oh yeah, I must need more friends. I must need that friend group to actually be happier.
Yeah.
But to keep in mind is that like there's a lot of factors that come into my happiness, and I don't think friendships is the only thing that's affecting my happiness.
What do you mean?
Like currently when I was like insecure, I thought, oh, friendships is the reason why I'm insecure, like not having enough friends. But maybe the reason I'm insecure or down currently is because I'm just stressed with work, you know, or I'm not even able to hang out with like the friends I have right now.
So in order for us to kind of reframe that energy, we ask ourselves, what do we want? What can we control? And how do we approach this with self-kindness?
So what do we want? I want to be happy, guys. What can we control? How to pick your friends, the attempts you make to connect with your friends, and how you spend your time to build a deeper connection with the people you love and enjoy.
Right. And then to be kind to yourself, it's important to know that you don't know the context. So in the case of Joie, where a lot of her friends now are like making new friends, right? Like Joie doesn't know the context of that.
Yeah, and I recently had spoken to one of my like close friends, and I was like, damn, it looks like you're living it up, bro. Like you're hanging out with people all the time. He's like, bro, like I barely know them. Like I just actually met them. We just took a photo, but it was a good photo, so I posted it. And I'm like, oh, damn. And in my head, like I was like, I like flashback to like a couple days ago, me just like dying in my bedroom. He's making so many friends.
Yeah.
And he also was like, you know, you're still like my best friend. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not like getting replaced, which was kind of a small fear of mine.
And I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that, because I feel like I tend to project my insecurities into situations where I'm like, oh my God, they're hanging out all the time. But I'm like, nah, bro, you just saw them hang out once. But you're implying to yourself that they've seen each other multiple times, that they're thinking about you, and that they're saying negative things about you. That's not the case.
Yeah, that's not the case.
That's not happening.
This whole episode is just about us talking about our projections.
Yeah.
So, what will make you happy? Genuine connections will make me happy. And I think like genuine connections doesn't mean like you have a lot of them, but it's just like how genuine the connection is. Like how deep is. Yeah, how strong and how deep your friendship goes. And you do have to, like, as you said earlier, you do have to like have friction. You have to go through that hardship. But I think once you go through that hardship and you experience genuine connection where like the other person just understands you, like I think for us, like sometimes we're feeling down, but when we talk to each other, it's like, oh my God, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
I feel like that will make me 10 times more happier than just having like a bunch of like new friends, you know?
Yeah. It's really about the strength of the connection, because I honestly, like, there's a handful of people who I have in my life where I'm like, I just need you. You know what I'm saying? Like, because when I talk to you, I feel like I could be myself. And when I'm that, I'm like, I feel like I don't need to filter myself. The energy feels so good. You know what I mean? And so really it's about the strength of the connection. But oftentimes we can feel as if we need more friends just because people might be busy or they don't have time to hang out with you. But really it's just reminding yourself that like, hey, what truly makes you happy is feeling secure in the friendships that you already have.
Mm-hmm. Or when it comes to like making new friends, how do you pick your friends? I think you first need to evaluate like what do you value in friendships. We had like an episode about compatibility and trying to find those people, which I highly recommend because we're spitting there, you know, we're laying down some knowledge. But yeah, I feel like you need to understand what you value in a friendship so you can actually find those people out in the world. And once you find those people out in the world, then you can you can build that connection and strengthen it and make it a genuine friendship that's fulfilling. That's all for today on our episode on friendship insecurities. Let us know if any of these insecurities were relatable to you, or maybe this video made you think of an insecurity we hadn't mentioned. Please drop that down below. Or maybe you've worked through your insecurities and we mentioned some tips, or we didn't even mention those tips that you're applying to your life. Drop them down below because, us tryhards really need it. So, yeah.
Yes. And lastly, thank you, Grace and Solar Moon, for the updates. We don't want to put their comments on blast, but they did say that we helped them. Our last videos have helped them with some of their friendships. So it's always nice to see that. So thank you guys for commenting.
Yeah. Remember, if you have any questions or any updates on your life, on how our videos have affected you or impacted you, drop it down below. We'll make sure to answer it. And we love seeing those comments, and we love talking to you guys.
Yes. And as a reminder, we only have 2 more episodes for this season, and then the next season is about identity. Anyway, if you like this episode, drop a like.
But if you love this episode, subscribe.
We'll see you again next Thursday morning. Have a good week, tryhards. We love you, and goodbye.